When did this happen? What happened to make you behave like this? Is it because you think I don't need you?
Yes.
I don't.
Well, that's very predictable of you. Don't act so tough. I know you are not.
Yeah, that's right. If I don't protect myself, someone will come in the middle of the night and take over my corner of the room and ask me about the fucking asparagus.
Don't be a bully. You're being a bully.
There are other things I'd like to do with my time. It's my time.
I have no idea what I'm doing here in your time. What am I doing here? I'm standing around like an idiot waiting for you.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for you.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for you to get rid of me, to tell me to leave. So tell me, so I don't stand around like a fucking fool.
The asparagus. Is this all about your asparagus?
No, it's not about asparagus.
Then what the hell is it about? Are you a special agent sent here to ruin my evening and possibly my entire life?
My entire life?
I love that line so much. He's so dramatic.
I forgot how dramatic he was, and then watching this scene I was like, there's no way he's gonna get more dramatic, and then he keeps like getting more and more childish, and I'm like, dude, you're throwing a tantrum, like just really stop.
Just from the beginning of that scene where he's like powdily like over salting the asparagus and dipping it in the butter, like it's the most disgusting thing in the world. I'm like, are you 2 years old? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Geneva.
And I'm Tatum.
We're two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week, we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking, as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. Before we dive into this movie that we both love so much, what have you been watching this week?
Yes. So to close out the year, is this our last episode coming out before the new year? Or do we have one more after this one?
I feel like this is our sort of New Year's celebration episode. I think it might be our last one. But I should check the schedule.
Yeah. Anyway, either way, we're getting close to the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I have actually not watched that much since our last recording because I've been busy, but I have been tapping into some nostalgia, which is an ongoing trend for me this past year. So I actually rewatched the movie National Treasure, which National Treasure is a national treasure. Like that movie, I think it's similar to Pirates of the Caribbean for me in the sense that like Disney doesn't make movies like this anymore. It is a movie that is so much fun. And I remember being a child watching that movie. It was the coolest shit I'd ever seen in my life. I thought it was absolutely incredible. Watching it now as an adult, I'm like, okay, I can poke holes in this left and right, but that's not what we're here for, you know? And I loved it. I loved the lore. I loved it. Nicolas Cage is like surprisingly less unhinged in this movie than he is in other movies I've seen him in recently.
This movie was definitely my introduction to Nicolas Cage. This was like who Nicolas Cage was for me. And then I was like, oh, he has this whole other unhinged persona.
Yes. So he's very contained in this film. I found moments where I was like, I wish Tom Cruise was running instead of Nicolas Cage right now. Like,
can you imagine National Treasure with Tom Cruise in it? Wow.
Oh, honestly, I would watch it. We've got Sean Bean. You know, he doesn't die in this movie, but he does get arrested. So we love it when Sean Bean can survive a film by the end. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun time. It's a movie where like I think it's so fun for kids, and having the memories of watching it when I was young. It's just the cast is great. I had a good time. Justice for Riley Pierce. Like, why is everyone treating him like he's a dummy? He's actually a cool guy.
Yeah, he was the only one who knew the tidbit about the daylight savings.
Yeah,
he saved them.
We got Harvey Keitel coming in doing the same role he does a lot of the time. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was fun to watch. And then I also rewatched. Oh, also the score for National Treasure is great. I like the score for that movie, or the main theme at least.
Is National Treasure not directed by John Turteltaub, by the way, who we spoke of a couple weeks ago?
You are correct. You are correct. Yes, thank you for reminding me of that.
You're welcome.
That's so crazy.
Tatum's new favorite name of all time.
Such a crazy name. And then yes, I also rewatched the movie Despicable Me. Like I said, I'm digging deep into nostalgia, everybody. It's a cute movie. The only movie I've seen related to that universe outside of Despicable Me is Despicable Me 2. I haven't seen anything beyond that or like the Minions spinoffs or anything.
Yeah, how many are they at now? Like Despicable Me 14 or something like that?
I think they made Despicable Me 4, and I think they've made 2 Minion movies.
That sounds about right.
Oh, there's just too much. But I enjoyed it. It was really fun. Geneva, I don't know if you knew this, but the youngest sister, Agnes, she's voiced by the actress from 8th grade.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like I should know her name, but
Elsie Fisher?
Oh, Fisher. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I've seen a single Despicable Me. Actually, no, that's not true. I was at a party where whichever Despicable Me that has that song Happy by Pharrell was on. And so I caught some of that in the background.
Is that a Despicable Me song? I thought it was like Trolls or... No, that's Can't Stop the Feeling.
Yeah,
Can't Stop the Feeling! Which one is Happy? Is Happy really... Anyway, I'll look that up later. Because is it Despicable Me? Whatever. It's a fun movie. It's cute. I think it's a great movie to watch once every 10 years.
It's in Despicable Me too. I just looked it up.
Okay, gotcha. I also like, what party were you at where Despicable Me 2 was on? That sounds like a great party.
It was a college party. I mean,
I love it.
No further explanation needed.
I love it. Yeah, aside from that, I have just been binge rewatching Parks and Recreation. I have not watched that show in a couple years, and I also have not watched seasons 1 or 2 and even longer than that, because I always remember not liking seasons 1 and 2 as much. I stand by season 1. I don't think it's good. Season 1 is really not worth rewatching for me. I was like, okay, I remember why I don't watch this. Season 2 is pretty good. So there's a lot of great moments that I forgot happened in season 2, and so I'm glad that I revisited it, because it's just the characters really start finding their own and developing that season and becoming more solid in who they will continue to be throughout the show. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. Really haven't been watching that much, and what I have been watching is just nostalgia. So National Treasure, Despicable Me, and Parks and Recreation.
I mean, that sounds absolutely delightful.
It's been a good time.
Yeah. My watching, now that I'm looking at the list, has been quite a bit more intense.
Oh no.
So first of all, I went to see the re-release of Interstellar in IMAX.
Ooh.
Which was a great
Shut
experience.
up.
Yes.
I'm so jealous.
Highly recommend.
Wow.
I know it was like, it ended up getting sold out like across the country. I think there were theaters that were adding screenings. Like, it was a massive thing. And
why was it re-released? Was it like an anniversary or something?
I am not sure, because
I didn't hear about any re-releases in Chicago.
It came out in 2014, so this would be the 10-year anniversary. I don't know if it was released in December, because he usually releases movies in July. So
there are screenings in Chicago. I'm gonna go see it in IMAX. Oh my gosh,
go see it!
Oh my goodness, that I'm doing it.
Yep, get your tickets soon, because my showing was completely sold out. I will say, this is my second time seeing Interstellar. For me, it's still not one of the top Nolan movies. Like, I appreciate what everyone loves about it. I just have not yet been able to connect with it in that way. I really like a lot about it. I think the performances are all excellent, and there's some really beautiful moments. I definitely teared up at certain points.
When he's watching all the videos of his
oh gosh, Matthew McConaughey, like that
was during the McConaissance, man.
Yeah, that era of him taking on these dramatic roles and kind of showing everyone why he is a star, just absolutely fantastic. I'd love to see him work with Nolan again. But anyway, Interstellar, if you haven't seen it, definitely go see it. It's wonderful. And if you're a parent in particular, I don't know if you'll get out alive because
Oh,
I feel like if I was ever to have children, I feel like that's probably when it would really start to connect for me. It's just until that day, if that day ever comes, there's just a little bit of a distance, but it is a great movie.
okay.
I'm very glad I was able to see it in IMAX.
I'm
right.
literally looking into buying tickets right now.
Do it. Yes.
I'm like, because I don't know how long it's going to be playing for.
I don't know. There's probably going to be some big end of the year IMAX movies that are going to push it out. So see it soon.
Dang it. Okay. Because anyway, I wish you told me, Geneva. I would have gone because I'm going to be on vacation this week and I can't.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
Okay.
I think our friendship will survive.
Okay. I'm glad you forgive me. Okay. Next. So first time watch Schindler's List. Had never seen it before.
I forgot
Steven
about
Spielberg
this. Yeah.
movie, yes, which won Best Picture. And I've already said all of these things to Tatum through text, but to put it on record with the podcast, this movie had been on my list for a very long time because I knew, it's a classic. Like everyone needs to see it. But I had this thought of like, it's a movie about the Holocaust. It's 3 hours long. It's black and white. It's going to be such a 3 hours of sadness and depression. And I just was never in the mood, But I finally put it on, and obviously it is quite sad. But it is also just so masterfully made, and it is so interesting in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like the way that Spielberg is able to really amazingly balance tone and pacing, and to draw you along from one moment to the next, and to kind of tell like, here's where to really, kind of emphasize the horror of what you're seeing, but then here's where to ease up a little bit, add in maybe some jokes, something lighter, or some sort of little, just, something so that you're not despairing the whole way through, that you're seeing the brightness of humanity in the midst of all of this horror and sorrow. And because the story itself is really beautiful in the midst of all of this horror and sorrow. And so I'm just really mad at myself for not having seen it sooner. It is a fantastic movie. The performances are all excellent.
So strong.
So strong.
Did Liam Neeson win an Oscar for that role?
No,
or Ben Kingsley?
Liam Neeson was nominated. Ray Fiennes was nominated. I don't think Ben Kingsley was, which is
okay.
He should have been. He's fantastic as well.
Yeah.
But it did, of course, win Best Picture. Which is extremely well deserved. So yeah, Schindler's List, if you've never seen it before and you're putting it off because it seems like it's going to be a lot, it's a lot more handleable than you think. And it is such an important story to tell.
It's worth it to watch
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even if you watch it once and never watch it again, it's a movie that impacts you in such a way that like, it's unforgettable. I mean, there's a reason why there's this iconic, what do you call it? People reference just kind of in the regular world the concept of the red dress. Like it's just a movie where when you see it, it just impacts you for forever. It's really, really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've actually referenced that movie quite a few times in my life in certain circumstances. Obviously very, very different, but just thoughts of like when I've been in situations having to care for people in my life that are in bad places, just this idea of like, I could have done more. 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 And taking on that guilt of like, it's my fault. I could have, and it's like, no, you did so much good in the midst of all of this. Like, it makes sense that you're feeling the way that you do because technically, yes, you could have got more. You could have done more, but like, you did so much. And I just, what a way to, that concept, like to this day. I mean, I think I've only seen that movie twice and it's been a long time since I've seen it, but like takeaways like that are things that have stuck with me and I think will be with me forever.
Yeah. And Liam Neeson's performance is so incredible in that scene in particular. And I didn't look up who actually won Best Actor, but I am so baffled that it wasn't him, because throughout the movie he has been so strong. You know, he's this very tall, imposing character, and he's kind of he's been living sort of this double life where he appears to be the affable, like, Nazi businessman who's palling around with the other Nazi officers. But then as the movie goes on, he's going through this internal change of becoming more aware of what's going on and more determined to do something to stop it. And now this is the first moment you've seen where he's completely broken and vulnerable, and he just absolutely collapses and is like begging for a level of forgiveness. And it's just, yeah, it's so moving. He's so wonderful. Anyway,
Tom Hanks won that year for Philadelphia.
I have never seen Philadelphia, so
it's a good performance.
Okay.
But I would pull for Liam Neeson, but Tom Hanks's performance is not that bad.
Okay. I do love some Tom Hanks. Okay, so moving on then, I rewatched Vertigo for the first time in several years. Something I'm debating maybe throwing on the pod one day, so I won't say too much, except, there's a reason it's like a top movie. It's
hot
excellent.
take. It's a great film.
Hot take. Vertigo is excellent. All right. And then the last one I will mention is I saw a noir movie from the early 50s called Don't Bother to Knock, which is a really interesting little movie. It is notable for being one of the very few performances of Marilyn Monroe's where she is not playing that sort of, comedic sort of ditzy blonde character. She's playing this woman. So the premise of the movie is that it all takes place over the course of one night, almost entirely in real time. And she is this really vulnerable woman who is brought in by her uncle, who works in this hotel, to babysit a little girl while her parents are out for the evening. And what we find out is that she has just come out of a mental institution. And so she's very, very sort of mentally fragile. And she ends up flirting with this guy who's a pilot, played by Richard Widmark. And he's kind of has his own romantic travails. And at first he's just like, oh, there's this beautiful woman who wants to flirt with me. That's fine. But as the evening goes on, she starts to... So her boyfriend had been killed, and that was kind of the reason for her mental breakdown. But there's also hints that she has this really traumatic past. She may have suffered some abuse by her parents. And as the evening goes on, she becomes more and more unstable and starts acting really irrationally. She starts thinking that he's her dead boyfriend. She starts treating the little girl really harshly because she feels like she's interfering. And so it's like, in one sense, she's the villain of the movie, but the movie is actually has a real sense of empathy towards her, and you really feel for her. Like, this is a woman who has been victimized and has gone through some really horrible circumstances, and the movie is not condemning her. It's sort of, Richard Widmark's character, as his transformation through the movie is he starts out as this guy who his girlfriend breaks up with him because she's like, you have no empathy for other people. You need to learn to see other people as people and have grace for them. And over the course of the story, as he's dealing with Marilyn Monroe and realizing what a hard time she's had and how vulnerable she is, he's starting to have empathy for her, and he really wants her to get help. And so it actually ends in kind of like a beautiful little place. And so I wouldn't say
What year did this movie come out?
1952.
52,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so this is post-war, just a few years post-war. But, still relatively early in terms of being able to talk about and articulate mental health struggles. And I think it's kind of ahead of its time in certain ways because of that. So, and I think Marilyn Monroe is very good in it too. And, it's kind of a sign of other directions that she could have gone in if she wasn't forced by studios to mainly, stay within that same archetypal role. So, yeah, I would really recommend Don't Bother to Knock if you're interested. It's not
sounds good.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an all-time great movie, but it is, I think, very underrated and very underseen. So I would recommend it.
Okay. Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
When I was looking up who won Best Actor the same year as Schindler's List, I went to the Wikipedia page for all of the nominees and winners for everything at the ceremony that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept seeing nominations and wins for Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out in the same year.
That's right.
Same year. I think I knew that, but I forgot.
I knew that as well, and I also forgot. Yeah, that was Spielberg's
his
insane year where it's like he finally, which I think this is like his first time that he really got significant, because he also win Best Director as well for Schindler's
He won
List?
Best Director, for Schindler's List, yeah.
I think it was his first Best Director win after, an insane career of hits. And it's also like one of his biggest blockbusters, and so he managed to do both in the same year.
He's just a titan. I was kind of sitting around this weekend. I've been cooking a lot of food prepping for something I have coming up. So I've just had the TV on in the background, and I just had a channel of Pluto TV on in the background, and it played Minority Report, and then it also played AI. And I was like, who is this guy? And I just had this moment in my brain where I was like, he has directed not only so many films, but so many different genres and like different levels of box office appeal and actors. And I'm just like, bro, all of them have been white people, mostly for the most part. But my goodness, he's incredible. There's no one like him. There really isn't.
Truly. It's like, in a weird way, in some ways, he's almost underrated. Yeah. Like we rate him.
Well, I underrated it until I looked at it again. I was like, wait, what?
Wait a second.
I'm taking Steven Spielberg for granted. This
really
is upsetting. Oh, man.
Yeah.
GenevaW, it's going to be rough. Like, in the next year, we're going to lose a lot of directors, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Don't say that.
It's going to be rough.
It sounded like you said in the next year, which makes me think
No.
Okay.
No,
the
next 10 years. But I'm just like, man, it's just...
I know.
So many just legendary directors.
Did you see that, maybe we talked about it, when Killers of the Flower Moon was coming out, there was some interview excerpt that I saw from Martin Scorsese where he basically says, like, as he's in his 80s, I guess people were asking, are you planning to slow down? Do you feel like you've said all you need to say? And he's basically like, no, the older I get, the more I feel like there are stories I want to tell. And I'm learning more. I'm growing. Like, there are still things that I have to say. And it's just, I mean, God willing, we will still have him for another 10 plus years, but who knows? It's just so sad to think that eventually we will lose him. And,
I
there are always stories you could still
I
tell.
can't imagine a world of cinema without Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg making films. Like, I don't want to live in that world.
Anyway, all right. We should
also Catch Me If You Can was on in the background too. Like,
yeah. Good movie.
It was just a very unintentional Spielberg binge this weekend.
I wonder if they were just doing a Spielberg marathon or something.
They probably were. They do that sometimes.
Yeah, it makes sense. One Spielberg movie from that era I need to rewatch is War of the Worlds. I didn't really like it when I saw it, but I was pretty young. I think I would love it if I saw it again.
I loved it when I watched it when I was younger. And then as I've gotten older, people crap on it. So I'm like, I don't really want to go back and revisit it because maybe I won't like it anymore.
I feel like I've heard positive reappraisals of people like,
okay,
no, this was actually really good. So
okay.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, we should probably move on to the actual substance of this episode.
Talking about another titan of a director.
Oh, gosh.
Another phenomenal filmmaker that I don't ever want to live in cinema without.
Yes.
But we've got him for a bit longer.
Yes. Fingers crossed. All right.
Also married to one of my favorite comedians of all time.
It's true. I don't not know the fact that he's married to Maya Rudolph. It's just something that it doesn't immediately come to mind when I think of Paul Thomas Anderson. But then when I remember it, I just have to smile. Like, that's
so pleasant.
Incredible. So wonderful. Yeah. All right. So today on the show, we are discussing Phantom Thread, the 2017 movie film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Vicky Krieps. Do you know how to pronounce her name? I should have looked this up.
I never know. Yeah, I can try and look it up.
Okay. For now, I'm going to say Krieps because that looks like how it's spelled, but if that is wrong, I apologize. Also starring Leslie Manville. So the film is based loosely on real-life fashion designers Cristobal Balenciaga and Charles James. Phantom Thread centers on Reynolds Woodcock, the head of a top-tier couture house in 1950s London, whose artistic process is managed through layers of routine and perfectionism designed to prevent anyone from getting close to him. Tatum, sorry, do you have the pronunciation?
Yes. Krieps.
Okay, cool.
According to the internet, that's what it says.
I trust the internet.
There we go.
When he meets Alma, played by Vicky Krieps, a waitress who immigrated to England from an unspecified European country, there's immediate attraction between them, and he quickly takes her on as both lover and artistic muse. However, Alma quickly chafes at the narrow girlfriend role he wants to assign to her, and her stubbornness and intelligence prove to be his match. Throughout the film, the escalating push and pull of their relationship goes to tense and sometimes weird places, while exploring themes of love, autonomy, artistic freedom, compromise, and more. Thank you very much.
That was that was very well written. I like that a lot.
Thank you. I wrote that in the 5 minutes before we started recording.
You wrote that in 5 minutes? Dang.
I spent so much time trying to pick the quote, and then I was like, crap, I need to write an intro. Anyway, well, speaking of not having enough time, I basically did no research for this, so I don't have any, fun facts, really, about production, except for two, which I think everyone already knows, but I may as well list off here. First is that Daniel Day-Lewis is a extreme method actor and apparently took a year to learn how to become a top tier couture seam sewer tailor as part of his process, which, good for him.
Good for him.
Certainly produced an incredible performance, and also apparently he can produce incredible dresses now, so that's
that
great.
is cool.
Yeah, good for him.
I feel like I remember him saying at one point at some award ceremony somewhere, I don't know if he won a Golden Globe. I feel like he won something for this role, but I remember him saying thank you to all of my loved ones who put up with me being a baby for the for the last X amount of months.
That's amazing. Well, he did. This is supposedly, at the time, he said he was retiring and this would be his last role.
Right.
I feel like something has been announced since then that he's acted.
Not that I know of, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, if this is his last role, it is a great one. And if he changes his mind, all the better.
Yeah.
Okay. The other fun fact I have is not actually about this movie itself, but I just read this recently and it cracked me up. Apparently, speaking of Christopher Nolan took his kids to see this movie, and then for a while afterwards, whenever they were mad at him, they would nickname him Reynolds Woodcock.
Wow.
Which is hilarious, kind of sweet, and also I really want to know what that family dynamic is like.
Yeah, if his life at home is anything like the characteristics of Reynolds Woodcock, then I don't want to be there. Can I say a fun fact as well?
Yeah, please.
I remember when I found this out, I freaked out. I was blown away. But Johnny Greenwood, who is the composer for the score of this film, he is also the lead guitarist and keyboardist for the band Radiohead. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Radiohead, Geneva, but
only a little, mainly by name. I'm sure I know some of their songs, but I feel like I found out this fact when he did the score for Power of the Dog, and then I forgot it. So, oh my goodness, that is wow. I mean,
it's crazy.
It's a brilliant score. The Power of the Dog is also a brilliant score. So, wow.
But the fact that he's a guitarist and keyboard for Radiohead, I love it. I mean, Radiohead is what an incredible band, super talented. But wow, the fact that his skills can translate over into film scores is just really cool. Paul Thomas Anderson, he's a big music fan. I don't know. So for anyone listening to this, Paul Thomas Anderson is one of my favorite film directors of all time. So I know quite a bit about him ish. But Paul Thomas Anderson is a big music fan. And so he has directed a lot of music videos for the band Haim. which obviously one of the sisters, who's one of the 3 singers in that band, is the star and protagonist of his film Licorice Pizza, which is the one movie of his that I not only dislike, I hate that movie. But he's also directed music videos for Radiohead too. So, yeah.
that I did not know, but that makes a lot
Yeah,
of
he's
sense.
a big music guy.
Yeah. Wow. Good for him. Well, let's start off talking about just our experience with Paul Thomas Anderson and then seeing this movie for the first time. Did we see this movie together or did we see it separately and talk about it? Because this was early in our friendship when we were starting to see a lot of movies together.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. I don't think we saw this together in theaters.
Okay.
I don't think that we did.
I just remember 2017 was a big year for me in terms of like, I was only a couple years into really starting to get into, tracking the Oscars and trying to watch as many nominated movies as possible. A lot of great movies came out in 2017. And I just remember my memory is that it was all one weekend. Maybe it was a little more time than that. But I have this memory that it was in one weekend that I saw Phantom Thread, Molly's Game, and I, Tonya. And it was just my weekend of cinema.
I think we did Molly's Game and I, Tonya together.
Okay.
So maybe we also did Phantom Thread together. I remember from that year, we did Manchester by the Sea. Now that you say it, I'm pretty sure we did I, Tonya and Molly's Game. I remember talking to you about Molly's Game after we left.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that we saw Phantom Thread together.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I'm a bad friend that I don't remember specifically, but
I remember talking to you about movies at that time. I just don't remember if we were physically in the theater at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, what is your, well, you just said Paul Thomas Anderson is one of your favorite directors, but how early did you start coming to his films? And then what did you think of this film on first watching it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I honestly think that the first movie of his that I saw was There Will Be Blood, which is we will talk about that movie on this podcast at some point. That is one of the best films ever made. It is, I will forever be upset that No Country for Old Men won Best Picture over that film. No disrespect to that movie, but There Will Be Blood is a perfect movie. I'm not going to go on and on about that because we will have an episode dedicated to it. But so yeah, There Will Be Blood was the first film I saw of his. And then after that, I was immediately like, I want to watch more of his stuff. So after that, I remember I watched The Master. And I did not like The Master as much. And so that kind of like put me off from watching his movies for a while. And so I think after The Master, the next movie of his that I saw was Phantom Thread. And then I loved Phantom Thread so much that I was like, okay, I want to go back and watch other things and then so on and so forth. And then the more movies of his that I saw, I have since seen all of them, I think. I just, with every movie that I watch of his, I love him more and more, except for Licorice Pizza. I absolutely despise that film. I am so morally opposed to that movie. I cannot even express how morally opposed I am to that movie. But yeah, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. I think that he has such an eye for detail and lighting, and he's such a talented screenwriter. The concepts that he comes up with, the ways that he creates like characters that feel like real people. And I feel like when I'm watching his protagonists, I feel like I am them. I don't know how to communicate that, but like however he writes his scripts, they're so personable that I feel like I am that character as they're living in that world.
Well, just as I was writing down the argument between Reynolds and Alma in order to create the quote for us to read at the beginning of this episode, I was just so struck by how naturalistic the dialogue is, given that these are two characters in very stylized circumstances who each have very distinct voices. The way they perform it, it really does feel like you're sitting down with two people and that's just the argument that they would have. And, we didn't really there's a lot of overlapping of dialogue within the argument, which, makes sense because they're both so heated. We didn't really do that. But yeah, it really does pull you right into that scene,
yeah, his characters and the way that they're written and shot, they're just so relatable to me. I remember when I watched his movie Punch Drunk Love, the first like 10 minutes of that film, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like my head when I'm having an anxiety attack. Like, I don't like, this feels like I just love it so much. I also think, I don't think this is an uncommon opinion to have, but Daniel Day-Lewis is one of my favorite actors. He is such a talent.
Wow, what a hot take.
I know. He really is such a talent. Yeah. And the particular pairing between him and Paul Thomas Anderson is so incredible. Like, I can just imagine being on set or being in the same room as the two of them, kind of working out these characters. And this role that Daniel Day-Lewis plays in this film is so different from the one that he plays in There Will Be Blood, but also similar. Anyway, I feel like I'm going too far into, I'm going a little bit too far with the question that you asked, but that's okay. I love Paul Thomas Anderson. He is one of my top favorite directors. I love him. I think Daniel Day-Lewis is phenomenal. And I think Vicky Krieps really holds her own in this movie. This was the first time I ever saw her. I don't know where this comes in her filmography, but
I think this is, I should look up her actual filmography. This wasn't her first film, but I think it was definitely her first major English language film. And this is definitely where most English, like American people would have known her. And she is so
she has to carry so much of this film on her shoulders while being opposite like this actor who's so powerful and commands so much of the screen, and she holds her own and she dominates in a lot of ways. So yeah, and then obviously, you know, Leslie Manville, who plays Cyril, also incredible. So it's a great movie. I love this movie.
Yeah, this was, I am pretty sure, the first Paul Thomas Anderson movie I had ever seen.
Really?
I think so, because...
is it the only one you've seen? No, you've seen Magnolia and Licorice Pizza.
Yes, you showed me Magnolia. I saw Licorice Pizza. I've also seen The Master and Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights...
okay.
Should probably give Boogie Nights another try. I was very uncomfortable watching that movie for obvious reasons. I should maybe give it another try. But I have not yet seen There Will Be Blood, or I've tried to watch Punch Drunk Love, and maybe because it is so anxiety-inducing, I've never been able to get past the first
After the first
minutes.
10 minutes, it calms down. It really does calm down.
That's
it just
good.
Starts out with a real spiral.
It just gets to the scene where he's with his sisters, and they're all being horrible to him, and I just feel so sorry for him that I turn it off. Anyway, but yes, all this is to say is that I went into this movie having no idea what Paul Thomas Anderson's deal was, and I was just entranced. I had no idea where this movie was going. I don't even remember.
I don't think anyone did. How could anyone know where this? I mean, it's such a disturbing twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't remember if I went in thinking that I had a handle on what it was going to be. I don't think I was maybe that quite. I think I maybe like had enough, had seen enough to know this movie is kind of more thriller-esque than, your standard period drama. But yeah, I was quite thrown, but also absolutely entranced by everything that happened in this movie. And I have not rewatched it since then, but as I told Tatum last night, I think this is one of the top movies that to this point I had only seen once that I think about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is really stupid, but I saw this really terrible rom-com when I was doing a deep dive on Cillian Murphy's career. His one rom-com that he ever did with Lucy Liu, terrible movie that I enjoyed very much, but I was like, this is Phantom Thread. Because basically the entire movie is like she's sort of like psychologically torturing him the whole time, and then at the end she's like, yeah, but like you're a weirdo and this is the only way that I can get through to you, and he's like, you're right. And they just go off to like be weirdos together, and I'm like, That's Phantom Thread. That's the pattern of Phantom Thread.
Except it's in romantic comedy form, apparently.
Apparently.
So weird.
Yeah, very strange movie. Young, like, Jason Sudeikis is in it as, like, the best friend who just hangs out. Anyway. So yeah, all that is to say is I really love this movie, and the twist is incredible. Also, this movie looks fantastic. I mean, kind of goes without saying, but it's just absolutely gorgeous cinematography, and the production design, considering that we're basically in the same, like, townhouse the entire time. All of these gorgeous William Morris wallpaper prints, and the costume design rightfully won an Oscar. Like, this movie is just looks absolutely beautiful, and that just makes everything that is happening psychologically between the characters all the more unsettling, because you're like, that's not how people act in these, you know, beautiful costume dramas with gorgeous settings. Anyway, let's see. So what do we want to talk about when it comes to this movie in terms of, like, digging a little bit deeper? I guess just to kind of at least start with going through the plot. We might derail ourselves.
Us? Derail? Never. Never.
What are you talking about? So like I said, basically we start with Reynolds being introduced in the context of this world that he's built for us, this beautiful townhouse that he lives in, where it seems to be like one floor is his living quarters, and then another couple of floors are the business that he runs with his sister, Cyril. Cyril is such a fascinating character that we definitely need to
do not
dig
pick
into.
a fight with me. You won't come out alive.
Oh my gosh.
Shut up. No, you shut up. Don't pick a fight with me. You won't come out alive.
This is the definitely the first thing where I noticed Leslie Manville. Probably not the first thing I'd ever seen her in, but... And I just remember a few years later watching Mrs. Harris Went to Paris, which is also about a house of couture. She plays a very different role in that. Anyway.
Did she win an Oscar for this? I forget. I know she was nominated.
No, the only Oscar it won was Best Costumes. Well deserved. Yeah, she was nominated. Daniel Day-Lewis was nominated. And then there were a few other nominations, but
okay,
they did not win. Sad. Yeah, so we pick up with, like, he seems to have this cycle of he picks up a woman to be his girlfriend, and then everything is fine for a few weeks, and then she starts to get on his nerves, and then he basically foists her off onto his sister to deal.
Yeah, Cyril asks her to leave.
Oh my gosh. The, like, repeating pattern of these breakfast scenes, like these highly structured routines that he has within the movie are kind of exemplified in these breakfast scenes he has, which is, like, it's so fascinating as a little insight into his character too, because he gets so annoyed when there is the slightest hint of noise, and so his girlfriend has to learn to be very careful or she'll be banished to her room for breakfast. No indication of why he doesn't just take breakfast in his own room. Like, why he needs to be down and around people in order to start his routine. Do you have thoughts generally? I guess we should start talking about, like, just Reynolds the character and Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. What would you say about Reynolds Woodcock? Who is he? And what makes him so distinct as a character?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think he's a great guy, super mature.
Yeah.
Definitely. No. So I want to just say real quick, when you were mentioning the breakfast scenes and like his girlfriend's making noise, I just want to shout out the sound mixing in this movie. I feel like sound in and of itself is a character in this film. Depending on how sound is used, when it's used, what objects are making the sound, like, that in and of itself can change the course of an entire scene. And so, yeah, I think the sound mixing in this movie is very, very good. But yeah, getting to Reynolds as a character. Well, first of all, his last name is Woodcock, which I think is such a brilliant choice for a last name, because I feel like you could sum up his entire personality in the fact that his last name is Woodcock. Yeah, I mean, obviously I said Daniel Day-Lewis is one of my favorite actors. I think his performance in this is so he just, I mean, he's method, so I guess it kind of makes sense, but he just is this person. Like, he's not putting on a performance. He is Reynolds Woodcock, and I believe everything about, I believe this man exists. I believe that there is a house somewhere of a man named Reynolds Woodcock who designs dresses. Like, he just feels so real. But as far as the character himself, yeah, I mean, he's a big baby, and I think, so this is, I think, my third or fourth time rewatching this movie. And every time I watch it, he feels more and more like a child to me. And I think that's because I'm getting older. And the older I get, the more frustrated I am with someone that age behaving that way. But yeah, I think he definitely, I feel like I'm supposed to, like, if I were to meet a person like him in real life, I probably would hate him. Like, he's very full of himself. He's very rigid, very stubborn, very demanding, very rude, very insensitive, very a lot of things. But at the same time, I think this movie does a really good job of not just making him like a one-tone character. He's not an asshole. He's a confused person who misses his mom, and he's like a mommy's boy. He clearly is a mommy's boy, and he lost his mother too young. And I think I have a lot of empathy for that, of like the fact that he lost his mother. She was the one who taught him his trade, and he looked up to her so much, and it almost seems like when she passed, he lost a part of himself. And so because of that, he's latched onto his sister in like an inseparable way, because he doesn't know how to be alone. He's not comfortable being alone, but he's also terrified of letting people in, because I think he's terrified of losing them. And so then he pushes them away, and then he, so I just think he's a very complex character. When push comes to shove, like, overall, I think he's very annoying and he's very rude. But in a way that's also funny and comical. I mean, even like the quote you just chose, like, to ruin my entire life. It's like, it's really not that dramatic. Like, yeah. He just strikes me as, like Lindsay Lohan in Freaky Friday. You're ruining my life. Yeah.
Do you have a gun? Yeah. Let me see your gun. Where is it? What are you doing?
Oh my goodness. So I love his character. I think he's fascinating, and I think that he's made even more fascinating being across from Alma, when she like the fact that she is in this is what allows us to see more depth within him, and I think that balance is really cool. So
yeah, like the way Daniel Day-Lewis is able to balance, because there's sort of two, or maybe even more, three sides to Reynolds Woodcock, because there's the sort of like, there's the public facing side that he has when he's with his clients, where he's very like, he's very suave, he's very self-assured, he's very he's everything that you would expect in like a high-powered haute couture atelier, whatever the term is. And he does so well in sort of dealing with clients when they are not getting on his nerves, and kind of treating them as being very special, and really giving them that experience that they want. And then when he also
seemingly treats his workers very well, like with a lot of respect, and which I think is cool too.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We don't see any indication that he is a bad or unreasonable boss. Maybe not the most personable of bosses, but it doesn't seem like he's a tyrant or a dictator to them or anything like that. But then there's also the Reynolds Woodcock, who's kind of, who he is on his own in his private life, but when his routines are in place, where I think he really thinks of himself as being a very confident, stable person who is strong, knows himself. He thinks all of these things about himself. But then when Alma comes into his life, we start to see more the real Reynolds Woodcock, which is someone who is very
emotionally unstable and unsure of himself.
Very insecure, very sort of the second something doesn't go his way, the second he's in unfamiliar territory, he starts to complain, he starts to lash out, he starts to
whine. He's whining.
Like you say, I mean, he is just a big toddler in certain ways. You know, he's emotionally, he's just never really reached adulthood in certain circumstances. And Daniel Day-Lewis just does such a great job of perfectly blending all of these three personas together into one person, you know, and you can easily, it just makes so much sense when different sides of him comes out and you're like, oh yeah, of course that's also the person that we just saw 5 minutes ago, like, you know, talking to a royal about the beautiful wedding dress he's going to create her. Of course that he's also this person. It's really fantastic. So he has Cyril dump his girlfriend for him so that he can escape to the country. And then he meets Alma there, and she's a waitress. Immediately
meets her.
He must have been on the prowl. I really love the fact that, I mean, I love everything about the first scene of their meeting where she waits on him and he gives this really large order. I love the fact that the thing that first draws his attention to her is when she trips. Like, there's this little moment of imperfection and she kind of like catches herself and sees him looking at her and smiles. I don't know, there's like, because I don't even know if he obviously wants to, I think it says something about him seeing some level of potential but imperfection, and something in him wants him to then sort of mold it into something perfect. I could easily see that being the pattern that he's always had with his girlfriends and his muses, as of, you know, there's something about you that's not quite right, I want to make you perfect. And then once he's either achieved that or he's reached the level where he realizes he's not able to achieve that, he wants to dump them and start over. I don't know, what do you think about their first meeting scene?
Well, I find it interesting that we don't really get to see much of what his previous relationships are like. We get the sense, obviously, that, you know, he has a muse of this particular type of woman who's a particular size, who's a particular age.
He likes a little belly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't. My goodness. Yeah. And the fact that Cyril's the one who says that.
You're the ideal shape. You're the ideal size. She's like, I am? She's like, yes, he likes a little belly. Wow. Way to cut her
You
down.
have no breasts. Yes, I know. It's fine. It's my job to give you some. Which, like, is kind of a sweet response, but
yeah.
It's so strange how when he's working professionally, he has such a professional rapport of how he talks. You can tell that he knows how to communicate, but then outside of that world of like clothing that he knows so well, he doesn't know how to communicate. Like he just says things and just reacts and responds. And anyway, but yeah, so going back to what I said before, or was starting to say before, I find it interesting that we don't know much about his previous girlfriends, of like, what was it that drew him to them? Did he just like how they looked? Or did he actually like their personalities at first? And what about their personalities did he like? We don't really see any of that. But I do get the sense that Alma is different. She's different from women he's been with in the past. And Cyril even says, like, I quite like her, you know? So she's clearly a different vibe. And so I wonder if when he sees her trip and he finds that appealing, I almost wonder if that's something that he's intrigued by in a way he hasn't been before. Like, he's always seen these women that are coming up to him as fans and wanting to impress him. And he's like, well, here's a woman who's kind of messed up. Like, that's kind of interesting. Like, it's kind of cute that she doesn't really know how to walk without bumping into something or dropping something or clanging something. And I feel like there is a part of him that really, really wants to be able to let loose and actually be his true self. But I think he's built this cage for himself that he can't break out of, that Alma kind of opens this door of like, oh, maybe that's a way that I can step outside a little bit and feel a little bit less imprisoned, I guess. And I think we see that as well, that, you know, obviously the way that their relationship is able to be sustained over time as he has to like get sick in order, you know, to be able to be cared for and show his true colors and be weak and vulnerable the way that she says. And so, yeah, I just feel like he's almost seeking an opportunity for him to be able to be vulnerable and be weak and be less perfect the way that he puts pressure on himself to be. And I think that I don't know. I feel like, at least in my interpretation, that's kind of what draws him to her. This idea of like, oh, she's kind of different. She looks how I want her to look, which is like, great. Let's start with the fact that she's pretty and I like how she looks.
She fits the mock-up that I have sitting in my attic.
Exactly. But then outside of that, there is something about her in terms of who she is as a person that he likes. And I'm assuming that in the past, he hasn't really liked the people he's been with as people. He's just kind of liked how they looked and them being on his arm or whatever. And then he cast them aside. I don't know if any of this is making sense. I feel like I'm just rambling, but
no, yeah, that does make sense. Actually, one thing that I was thinking that like I wonder about, I do like the fact that it's as ambiguous as it is, but I was kind of wondering is Alma the first person he has chosen to date who is outside of his sort of social class? Like,
right.
Have his previous girlfriends all been in that sort of like upper crust society? Is she the first one he's chosen to date who is, you know, not originally from England, who is, you know, a waitress, like, you know, a little more working class? Is that more normal to him? I don't really know. You know, it's kind of all up for interpretation. But I do like your theory that he's like even unconsciously looking for a change, even if he doesn't quite realize it. And he sees that in Alma. I don't think he realizes how much of a change he's going to get. And he's not very happy when he first finds out. But I feel like I could definitely see that being some sort of like subconscious urge within him. I just love throughout their entire first date, just again with Vicky Krieps being an absolutely fantastic actress who more than holds her own against Daniel Day-Lewis, just tracking Alma's face throughout it, because so much of this movie has sometimes been described as a thriller, and I definitely the first time experienced it as a thriller, even though there's not a whole lot of actual thrills. There are some very like twists where you're like, oh, okay. But it's just, her face is so unreadable at certain points. Sometimes like you can just see everything on her face, but then other times she intentionally pulls it back and you can't tell what she's thinking, and that's kind of what causes the tension, because you're like, what is she gonna do? But throughout the entire first date, like, you are already getting so much of what their dynamic is going to be, where she's just, you know, they both start very sort of open and vulnerable, and she's just having a great time. Like, she's really into him. He's, you know, handsome. He's interesting. He's intelligent. You know, he has this beautiful house. And then they have that moment where they sit down and he's sort of just like contemplating her. And it's like, what is happening here exactly? And she has that line where she says, if we're going to have a staring contest, you're going to lose.
Yep.
Which is like, it really does say so much about her. And she, as the rest of the movie bears out, it is very true. You know, she's not going to be the one that blinks. She's going to fight for what she wants.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like you get the sense that in the past, he's kind of always been the one who determines the dynamic, and he manipulates the women that he's with. And Alma definitely has the power here, in my opinion. Like, she is able to manipulate him, sometimes for the better and other times maybe for more questionable. Is it for the better? I don't really know. But I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, for me, I get this sense that in the past he's had control, and this time around, kind of like you said, he's not really aware of what he's getting into in the beginning. Yeah. And then as time goes on, he's like, oh crap, this is a very uncomfortable role for me. Like, I don't understand what to do. This woman's not listening to me. Like, she's not giving in. She's not surrendering. So like, but I also don't want her to leave. So what do I do with that? Like, I guess just throw a tantrum, because I don't really know what else to do.
Yeah, it's so funny too with their first meeting especially, but also throughout their relationship. In some ways she is so compliant. Like she really does seem to it does seem to bring her joy to be his muse and to kind of mold herself and make him happy and do the things she wants. Like she likes to serve him in certain ways. She talks about how when he's like, fitting her, she's like, I could stand for hours and hours. No one can stand as long as I can. Like she has a certain pride in her identity of being this sort of like statuesque creature that he's creating in a weird way. And I wonder too, like when, we were just saying like maybe he was subconsciously choosing her because she is different. I wonder if on a more conscious level, he's choosing her because he thinks she's going to be more compliant and quiet. Like he maybe sees her as like, especially if it is the first time he's dated someone in a different social class, whether he's like, oh, I have more power, I have more status, like, I can intimidate her and mold her and get her to do what I want. And
that's
like,
sorry, go ahead.
No, and maybe that is something that thinks he is looking for, and then when it turns out the exact opposite has occurred, he is surprised by it, or all the more surprised by it.
Yeah, I feel like I maybe interpret things a little bit differently, because I feel like when you're saying that she does kind of serve him at times, and she has pride in being his muse and things like that, and I interpret that differently. I don't think it's necessarily something where she is serving him and kind of lying down and letting him do his thing and just submitting. And I also don't think that he is expecting her to be that way. I think he sees her for who she is, and he knows that it's going to be a battle. But my thought is that I genuinely think that there's love here between the two of them. Like, I think that I don't think she's serving him. I think she's loving him. And I think that we see that especially when she tries to make that dinner for him. That is something where I don't feel like, oh, this is her just trying to get his attention. And it doesn't feel like for her that's coming from a place of insecurity. Yes, there is insecurity there because she does see him making a dress for the princess and knows he has this long-standing relationship with her. So there is some jealousy there, but for the most part, I feel like she does that because she loves him and she wants to be able to be close to him, just the two of them. And I think that he wants that as well. And so yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily counter to what you were saying, but I do think that in my interpretation, there is actual genuine love here between the two of them. And I think after a while, it isn't this thing of, I want to follow your lead, I want to take control, I want to do this. I do think there is a period where they're just like, we love each other and we're trying to figure out our dynamic. And then the dynamic that eventually works for them is her poisoning him and
Spoiler alert.
But I think majority of the movie is not this push and pull of, I'm trying to put you in this role, but you won't take it. It's more so like, we love each other. How do we make this work, sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that it's, when I say like she really seems to enjoy serving him, I don't mean that like that coming from a place of insecurity for her. I more mean, actually, I think we're agreeing. Like, I do think that there is genuine love on both sides, but so much of this movie is about two strong-willed people who want to love in very different ways. And, she really enjoys her identity as his muse, but she also enjoys being able to dominate him in certain ways, like being a sort of, this like sort of Freudian messed up, like she's kind of a motherly replacement in certain ways, or she, can kind of tell him what to do. And so I think a lot of it is her really wanting to love him in a specific way that is uncomfortable for him because it runs counter to, it's more vulnerable and intimate than he is used to. And So her trying to assert her will in like, let me make you dinner. But because she didn't make the pre-approved menu and she didn't set it at the pre-approved time, then he absolutely goes to pieces, you know? Yeah.
He's like, I tried to pretend and tell you that I liked it. Now you're telling me that I don't like it, but you would have known that I didn't like it because you know I don't like butter. Like,
you, first of all, you did not pretend to like it. You at no time did you pretend to like it. Oh man, so good.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Just to kind of pivot a little bit or transition, I guess. What for you, how does Cyril fit into all of this? It's like a weird love triangle, but not love triangle in like a all three of them want to be together sort of thing. But it's just like Reynolds kind of doesn't exist on his own because I get the sense that he doesn't want to. But then Cyril has this, I don't know, double side to her, in my opinion, where like sometimes you get the sense that she's kind of helping him maintain this stability because she knows that he's going to throw a tantrum if she doesn't help keep the status quo. But then you get other moments where she's clearly like, this is not my job to figure this out on your own. Who do you think I am? Your mother? Like, so I think it's really, I can't quite figure her out.
Yeah.
I'm like, does she like Alma and admire her because she's different? Or does she hate Alma because she's taking attention away from her? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
She's so fascinating to me. I can't tell what her motives are, except she likes both of them. She loves her brother. She likes Alma, but also she's massively frustrated by both of them at the same time.
Yeah. No, I had the same questions too, because I feel like you don't really get a sense of Cyril's life outside of the House of Woodcock and outside.
Where does she live? Like,
where
she
does
doesn't
she
live here.
Does she have relationships apart from her relationship with Reynolds and then the women that she manages there? I feel like a couple times we see them out to dinner and there's like a silent man sitting next to her and I'm like, is that her husband who just never talks, or like is he just like a business partner or something? I have no idea. She's a very mysterious character. I feel like we should talk this through because it also goes back to another question I had, which is about his relationship to his mother, and which was clearly such a formative relationship for him. And I don't think they say exactly how old he is when his mother dies, but clearly it was at an age
clearly young, I think.
Yeah, it really seems.
I mean, when we see the ghost of his mother, she looks like she's a teenager.
She does, yeah. She looks really young. And didn't he say it was a second wedding too? And he's old enough to sew the wedding dress. So,
wait, what? Wait, what are you asking?
The dress that his mother's wearing in the photograph and then later in the hallucination, he sewed that dress. It was for her second wedding.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I got confused.
Okay, yeah. Quick question. Are we assuming that Cyril is an older sister or a younger sister?
I assumed older.
Okay. That's what I was assuming as well. But it is, as with everything with them, it's very ambiguous.
They're close in age. Maybe they're twins.
Yeah, that's true.
Could be twins, honestly. That would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. But yeah, with Cyril, like, it really does seem like after their mother died, she just took on this motherly sort of status in his life, and it has just kind of never left it. And you do wonder, like, does she want the life and the relationship that they have? Does she want to maybe, she likes Alma, even if she doesn't always agree with her methods. Is she kind of hoping that one of these days one of his girlfriends is going to finally figure him out so that she can go
probably
have a life of her own? I don't know. But yeah, they are so close in such an interesting way. Like she really is the only person that he trusts. And I guess you do get that sense of it's because they spent a lot of their childhood and young adulthood with no parental figure, and so they really had to learn to rely on each other. He seems to trust her judgment implicitly. He, like, I don't think he ever questions any decision that she makes, as far as I can remember.
What are they arguing about in that one scene?
The one where she's like, don't go against me, you'll regret it.
Yeah.
Oh, that is when, so it's after the disastrous surprise dinner, and Cyril asks if he wants her to ask Alma to leave. Like, do you want me to do the thing that I've always done? And she's like, what you're doing to her, like, you've basically made her a ghost. I guess he's been ignoring her. It's not fair to her. I actually really like her. So if you want her to leave, just, I can deal with it. And he says no. And then they kind of have an argument base that comes out of that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I feel like that, that argument, so the argument that comes before that between Reynolds and Alma, where she tries to make him dinner as a surprise, I feel like that is really the turning point for the movie, because after that, I think that's the first time that she poisons him with the mushrooms.
Yeah, it is.
And so that's when we really start getting into the, like, okay, so especially, you know, that argument that he has with his sister, I think that's really establishing, okay, Alma's not going anywhere. Like, she's going to be staying here. So she just poisoned him and she's not going anywhere. So where's the story going? Like, I don't really know. Mm-hmm. And I think after he wakes up that first time, recovers after being sick, I think that's when he asks her to marry him.
Yeah.
So
it is. And she waits a really long time.
A really long time.
You can't fully, it's like in profile, you can't fully see her face, but it really does seem like she's like, wait, that worked? Like, wait.
I also think she's doing it on purpose. I think she's like, yeah, I'm going to make you wait. Like, like she's really thinking about it, because I think she's surprised, but I also think she's stretching it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Just reminding him that she's got the upper hand here, because she could say no.
She absolutely does. This is a very random question, as we're just kind of still early-ish in the movie, like in the courtship between Reynolds and Alma.
Would I poison someone to get them to marry me? No, I would not.
You're like, hasn't worked yet, so.
Hasn't worked yet, yeah.
This is a question that I had while I was watching it. When he first brings her to their home, he takes her up to this bedroom, and then he's like, this is your room. Good night.
Yeah.
We have an early day tomorrow. And she's like, that's it? Basically. Yep. At what point do you think, 'cause I remember watching it for the first time and being like, is he gay? Is he impotent? Like, is there sex involved in this relationship? And at some point, clearly, it becomes a component of the relationship. But do you think it was there from the beginning, or did it take a while?
No, I actually had the thought of like, wait, is he gay? Like, I don't know. But then the more I kept watching it, I was like, no, I think it just takes him a really long time to like let his guard down in any way, shape, or form. At least that's my interpretation. There's definitely a way you could interpret it as him being gay. But yeah, I didn't see them being physically intimate until that first time that we have that shot of like him pulling her into his bedroom.
Yeah.
Is that after when he makes the dress for that lady, and then no, it's before that.
No. It's not too long after she's first arrived. It's when they're at the restaurant and the two girls come up and they're like fangirling over him.
That's it, yeah.
Cyril kind of like gently sends them on their way. And almost just kind of like, again, with her incredible, unreadable facial expressions, she's just kind of watching all of this. And then she's looking at Reynolds and she's like, have you had enough? You look thirsty. And then he kind of smiles at her. And then the next shot is them like in his car, like careening through,
driving so fast.
So fast. I was like, okay, all right. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. I have no idea what on earth their sex life is like. Like, how often, like, I don't know.
It's intentionally kept very ambiguous. Like, the fact that it's not a centerpiece of their relationship at all. It's the craft is the centerpiece, her being the muse and him fitting her. Like, that is basically sex to them. Like, actual sex is just kind of
that's what I think that's what keeps them together.
Yeah.
Aside from her poisoning him, like I think that them as people, I really don't think they have much in common at all. But I think that as time goes on, Alma starts to fall in love with dresses just as much as he does. And so that's kind of the thing that they have together. And yeah, I think you're right. Like that is sex to them. Like they're like, as long as we're doing this, like we're fine. And I don't know. I find it really sweet. One of my favorite moments in the whole movie. I'm just like, the possibility of something like this happening in a relationship is it's just so sweet to me. But this idea that in this story, like he's created this beautiful art piece, this beautiful dress, and he gives it to a client who is the one she dresses her because she, keeps the electricity on, or whatever you call it. I don't think they have electricity, whatever. But like
they have electricity.
Okay, there we go. I don't know when this movie is set, to be honest. Like I don't know.
It's set in the 50s. Yeah, they've got electricity.
Oh, this is set in the 50s?
Yeah. When did you think it was set?
I'm so bad at costumes and wardrobe and history. I'm like, it could be the 1600s. I don't know.
No, post-war.
Anyway, shoot, I forget what I was saying.
The
yeah.
He designs the dress for the client.
Yeah, and then they go to her I think it's a wedding, another wedding for her or something, and she's just like drunk and disrespecting the dress that he's made for her. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's just sitting there at this table clearly looking so personally offended and upset by what is happening with his dress, and her clocking it and her being just as upset. And I think he tells her, like, don't start blubbering, don't start crying. She's like, I'm not crying, I'm angry. Mm-hmm. And then the two of them go and get the dress. And I love that moment when he's just leaning in the doorway and that one guy walks in. He's like, hey, what's up? Like,
no questions.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie, because I think it really shows that the two of them do have a connection that is really sweet. Mm-hmm. It's just almost exclusively revolving around like the one thing they have in common, which is appreciation for dresses and his clothing.
Yeah.
So
I really wonder if that's the moment where he fully falls in love with her, like seeing how protective she is about his art. She's like, because she has this line where she's like, she doesn't deserve to wear it or something. And like, mm-hmm. Well, when she takes the dress back, she tells that one woman, like, tell your friend, or I don't know what relationship that lady had to her, but like, basically she cannot behave like this. And we don't judge her for her choices, but she cannot behave like this and be dressed by the House of Woodcock. Like, there is a standard, and I have a personal interest in enforcing that standard. And yeah, like you say, there is something very sweet about them, like teaming up in this way when they are at odds for so much of the movie. Like, at this point, her sort of values and like life's purpose have really become aligned with his. And it is very sweet too, like throughout the movie, how you see her. At first, she's exclusively the sort of the model. He's designing the dresses for her. He's fitting them to her. But throughout the film, she starts really getting involved in, like, she'll be pinning things, or she'll be assisting with, laying out dresses for display or things like that. Like, she becomes one of the workers within the atelier as well. And she really seems to be picking up different skills in addition to, which she doesn't have to do, but she seems to really, come to love this industry as well.
Can I ask you, just thinking about that moment when they go to take the dress and he's leaning in the doorway or whatever, mm-hmm. I just wanted to highlight a few of the funny moments in this movie, because this movie is rather funny.
This movie is hilarious.
I particularly love the moment when, after they get married and they go on their honeymoon, and then they're sitting there at this ski resort, and she's like drinking tea or something, and he's like twitching, trying so hard not to be annoyed by all the noise she's making. Like,
I think she is intentionally like, okay, I've secured him. We're married now. I'm going to make so much noise just to see what happens.
You can tell that within him, he's trying so hard not to be annoyed, but he's also
really is.
Oh no, what have I gotten? Like, I just married this person. Now I'm stuck. What am I going to do? Like, I love that moment. I think it's very funny. Just his acting performance there, and his eyes, like, he's literally twitching. He's so irritated. And the sound is, I mean, again, I've talked about the sound mixing, but just like the sound mixing of that scene and how all of the noises she's making are louder than anything else. Like, so good.
Yeah. Another thing that really made me laugh out loud is also related to food. So there's the running thing where every time she pours something, she always like lifts it up a little bit higher to like see how high she can get it while still pouring. And when she first meets him and she's pouring his tea, she does that, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like cute. It's like flirty. It's like, there's like a charge to it, which he seems to like. But then later on in the movie, she's doing it, and it's really annoying him because it's so loud. And then at the very end, when
she draws it out.
She pours 2 glasses of water, and the second one she pours for herself. She pours it for so long, and she brings the pitcher so high while she's doing it, and he's just watching her like, "Are you done? Are you done? Are you done? Okay, now you're done."
But at that
it really
point,
made me laugh.
At that point, he likes it though, because isn't that right before he
I think that's
willingly drinks it, knowing that he's going to be poisoned?
Well, it's not in the water. It's in the omelet that he's chewing. But I think it's like that point is a real, like, it could go either way in their relationship. And I think they are mad at each other, which is why she's doing that, and he's kind of watching her. And so the moment of acceptance is like, I'm going to let go of this anger, and I'm going to go along with this strange game that she's invented for us. But that water pour is like, it's building this tension where we're like, we know that the omelet is poisoned. He doesn't know, but he knows that there's something going on. There's some sort of like turning point in their relationship that's going to happen. We just don't know what yet.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other funny moments off the top of my head. I know there's some in there, like with Cyril and things like that, but I can't seem to remember them.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if there are any other lines that I wrote down. I mean, the main one that I wrote down is the are you here to ruin my evening and possibly my entire life?
Well, there was one
so funny to me.
There was one line that I wrote down. This is not a funny one, but I think this is something that that Woodcock says the first time that him and Alma go on a date and they like go back to his house and they're sitting in front of the fireplace. Mm-hmm. He says to her, "I think it's the assumptions and expectations of others that lead to heartbreak." And I wrote that down because I was like, I feel like that has a lot, like that communicates a lot about who he is and how he approaches relationships. And he's just like, I'm not going to expect anything of anybody aside from them complying to every single thing that, like, it's very much so. He almost thinks about it in a selfish way of like other people get heartbroken, not because of what I've done to them, but because of the expectations that they have of me and the assumptions they have of me. And it's like, I mean, maybe, but you can also still be unreasonable. Like, I think that's true. But also if people's expectations and assumptions are humane, like, and very natural as someone who's in a relationship with someone else, like, you're the one at fault here. You're the one causing the heartbreak. They're not bringing it upon themselves.
Yeah. Well, it's like so much of this movie, like when he says things like that, he really thinks of himself as being a fair-minded, generous person. He really thinks like, you know what? I have my life, and if you want to share my life, you can. But if you don't want to, accede to every single, rule and routine I've set out for myself, well, then there's the door. Like, no hard feelings. That's just the way it is. He has no conception of a relationship actually should be compromise, and there should be give and take, and there should be, welcome any other person into your life means that you are going to need to accommodate and change in certain ways. He just has no conception of that. And he thinks there's nothing wrong with that. And Alma's like, yes, there is. And I'm going to show you how a relationship could be. I mean, what is so interesting about this is, like, I find this relationship to be sweet in certain ways, but it also, I don't know if it was just like my mood when I was watching it last night. I was like, this is also a weirdly very cynical look at relationships, where relationships are all about a struggle for power. And Reynolds is trying to exert his own will for this relationship, and Alma is trying to exert her own will, and each person is trying to gain the upper hand. And I mean, I don't think that this, Paul Thomas Anderson is saying all relationships are inherently like this. This is like this particular relationship, power and domination is a really big force within that. It's very important to both parties. And so a lot of the, the twists and turns that it takes are about them trying to gain their own will over the other. But yeah, this specific relationship between the two of them is so much about whose opinion of what we're going to do is going to come out on top. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm curious how you think age plays into all of this, because I think for most of the movie, age doesn't really seem to be a factor, and they seem to be fine. But then as time goes on, we start to see she gets to know this doctor, and he seems to be kind of interested in her, and she seems to be flirting and toying with him a little bit, but also just having fun. And then obviously we have the scene where she says, I want to go out dancing for New Year's Eve. And he's like, well, I'm not going. She's like, okay, well, I am. So fuck you, basically.
Good for her.
And she goes to this party, and then Reynolds ends up going himself. And then he sees her kind of in a situation where she's maybe mildly in danger, and he's like, okay, we're leaving, and he pulls her away. And so I wonder, like, what your thoughts are on the age difference, because I feel like for the first part of the movie, it doesn't really seem to be like anything of note to either of them. But seemingly after they get married and they've made this commitment, now he's like, oh man, she's a lot younger than me. And she's like, oh boy, he's a lot older than me. And it seems to be harder for him to accept than it is for her to accept. Mm-hmm. Because I think, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. So
yeah, no,
whatever.
No,
but it seems like maybe she doesn't mind the age gap as much. She's kind of like, I love you and I want to be in this marriage, but I also want to be able to go out and live my life, and you can come or not come. I don't care. And then he seems to be like, you need to be at home. And if you're not at home, then I'm freaking out. Or like, I'm going to try and push myself to come out, but really, no, I'm just going to bring you home. So he seems to have more issue with it than she does. So yeah, you just made me think of that when you were talking about like power dynamics. And so I wonder how that plays into like the age difference.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I mean, part of the context of that tiff over New Year's Eve too is like when they're at that dinner where the doctor is inviting her to go to that New Year's Eve party, so Reynolds and Alma are sitting in different places. So they can kind of see each other, but they can't hear what they're talking about. And my impression was that Alma, she's sort of enjoying the attention from the doctor. Like, she likes knowing that he's into her, but she's always bringing the conversation back to her husband. And like, I don't think he's going to want to go out. We'd probably prefer to stay in. Well, we'll see, But then he is sitting next to this lady who's like, she's like a...
Who is she? Like, why does she care so much?
She's some sort of aristocrat. I think
She's just like a local gossip.
Yeah, I think she's also like a client of his, but yeah, she's like getting all in his business and being like, look at your wife. She's flirting with that younger man. Like, she clearly is not even looking at you. Like, she doesn't care about you. And then afterwards, when they're playing that game of backgammon, and she gets mad partly because she loses, but also because he's like kind of belittling her. Like, she makes a mistake and he makes fun of her for it, and she gets really mad. And then the lady's like, look at her storming out like a toddler. Like, I don't want to be racist, but people from like other parts of the world like are just weird. And like, who is this lady, and why does she keep planting these ideas in his
There are
head?
2 kids on the playground who are just
like, sir, if anyone is the toddler, here you are. But
yep.
Anyway, but it's just interesting because like that sort of, I feel like that is the first time that you see him really talking with anyone in the outside world about basically anything that doesn't have to do with fashion, but specifically about his relationship with Alma. And it does seem to impact the way he kind of his views on this marriage of like, maybe I have made a mistake. Maybe she is too young for me. Maybe she is too impulsive. Like, and I don't know, it's just such an interesting thing to include because he otherwise doesn't really seem to care all that much about other people. It's more about how does this relationship affect me? But that seems to be the one moment that he actually displays himself, displays some actual jealousy or, an indication of like, oh, maybe Alma could like go out there and flirt with a younger man and leave me. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I get the sense. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, I get the sense too that with what you said about Alma seems to be pretty secure in their relationship despite the age gap. That
I agree. Yeah.
She, when he goes down and finds her, I think she wanted him to follow her the whole time. I think she really wanted him to join her. And they have this really long moment where they're kind of like staring contest. She's like leaning against the wall and he's just looking at her for a long time. And I don't know, I'm very curious about what she's thinking in that moment. And like the fact that he followed her, my interpretation is that to her that's a victory, even if he's pulling her home, he's not staying there with her. It still shows that he cares in the way that she wants to. And it's like step 1, maybe someday he'll actually go to the party with me. But for now,
I thought that he did go because he genuinely was like, okay, I'm going to try and celebrate this with her. Like, she expressed that she wanted me to go. I'm going to try it out. But then he got there and then immediately was like, nope, I don't like this vibe. So like, I do think he went there not to take her home. I think he wanted to try and have this experience with her, but it just was like, I tried. That's a no.
Yeah.
So I do think he went there with good intentions that were actually sweet and loving, but just didn't turn out that way.
Which, by the way, like, whatever sort of back and all it turns into, how can I get an invite to a party like this? They've got like elephants and balloons falling from the ceiling. Like, it looks like a vibe. It looks like something out of Babylon, kind of.
I was gonna say, the movie Babylon. Okay, so I think I was hoping to talk a little bit more about Cyril because I think you and I both agree that she's kind of hard to put your finger on. Like, what are her motivations? Does she like Alma? Does she like Reynolds? Like, do they annoy her? Do they not? And I don't know. I just find her endlessly fascinating. I guess I don't really know how I want to talk about her, but I just like there's so much there and we haven't really tried to dig into it all that much. So I don't really know how to get that started. I don't know if you have an idea, but
I mean, well, we
do you think she likes the relationship she has with her brother? Do you think she likes that dynamic that they have?
Oh, that is a great question. Honestly, I would have to say no. I feel like she has made peace with it because she knows the way he is, this is the only relationship that he's going to be able to have with her. Like, if she wants to continue to be part of this business, which she does seem to be very good at and seems to be contented with. And if she wants to continue to have a relationship with her brother, then she needs to accept the fact that she being his sort of minder and enforcer at certain points are kind of baked into that job description. But I feel like I do get the sense that she gets impatient with him at certain points. There's also that scene where it's just a brief moment where she mentions that, Barbara Rose, that super wealthy drunk lady who doesn't deserve to wear the dress, like, she's invited you to her wedding, and she's basically like, you need to go. And he's like complaining about it, but you can tell she's got the real practical head. She's the one who's good at managing relationships and the sort of politics of this, very high profile business. And sometimes that means like getting him back in line when he's acting kind of, oh, I don't want to go. And she's like, no, you have to, but you can also tell that she's impatient with him for this and like for other decisions that she makes throughout the movie. So yeah, if I had to guess, I would say she would rather something change, which is why she ends up being in favor of Alma overall.
Yeah, I think at the very least for me, it's very clear that she loves her brother. I think that she holds him very dearly. And I mean, she'd have to, because she clearly doesn't live here, but she comes over for breakfast every morning and she comes over late at night when he's measuring a dress for his new girl. Like, because part of me was initially thinking she loves her brother, but she's very frustrated by him. So she takes him in doses. She's kind of like, I can go during the day. It's my day job. My day job is handling my brother. And then I go home and I shut it off and I don't have to deal with it. But I'm like, but that's actually not true, because she sees him late at night and early in the morning. So like, it's just, it almost feels like this endless cycle that they can't break, of like, our whole lives, it's been the two of us and neither of us know how to function without each other. And so she's kind of like, if this is the role that I have to have in order to function in this world, I'll take it. Like, I know my brother, he's not going to do anything that's unexpected. Like, I know what I'm dealing with. And so I can put up with his eccentricities and still, like, I don't know. I almost feel like the fact that he's a clothing designer and she runs this business, it's seemingly like the more administrative side of things. Like, they're able to have this thing that keeps them together, but also creates a little bit of distance between the two of them. Like, we're both here because we love each other and we're running this business. But also, if we need a break, like, I can just say, hey, I'm working on like the bills over here. Can you just like leave me alone? So does that make sense? Like, it's something that bonds them and keeps them together, but also can create distance if they need it.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, their roles in their relationship to each other are also very specifically regimented, and there's a lot of privacy that they get from each other, which I think suits both of them really well. I'm very curious about Alma's relationship to Cyril as well, because, as we mentioned, like, there is a point where Cyril vocalizes, like, I'm becoming very fond of Alma. And I think she does. My interpretation of it is, she sees that Alma keeps pushing Reynolds and she worries about it. She very explicitly advises Alma against that surprise dinner, and turns out she was right.
100% right.
Or I guess, depending on your definition of right, if what Alma wanted was, or what is in Alma's best interest, is to provoke some kind of argument that will change their relationship, that will lead to change, I guess it was a success. But I don't think that was what she wanted. So, but anyway, one thing I was wondering though is when Alma poisons Reynolds for the first time, and Cyril is like, she seems baffled. Like, she's worried, but she's also baffled. And you get the sense, like, Reynolds is never sick. You know, he's just one of those guys who's just never sick. And when she insists on calling the doctor, I wonder, does she suspect Alma of having done something? That's kind of the sense that I got. She can't quite put a finger on it, but she thinks Alma might have something to do with this, and that's why she's so insistent about calling the doctor. And then when Reynolds is like, fuck off, she's like, oh, okay, as long as he gets better, I'm not going to like look too hard into this. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but I think that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that motivation there because, again, like you said, she knows her brother quite well. And so if she's like, yeah, this woman just shows up and all of a sudden he doesn't just have a cold, he's like debilitatingly sick. Maybe there's something else going on here. And I wonder, as time goes on and their relationship continues, like, obviously, you know, they're going to keep doing this. Like, she's going to keep poisoning him over and over again because they've both consented to this. So I think clearly, maybe not clearly, but the way I interpret, like, her interviews with the doctor, it's her kind of explaining to him, like, hey, so, like, he's going to keep getting sick, but, like, here's why. And I feel like they're going to have to eventually bring Cyril into it, too. Like, and so they're all going to have to just create this ecosystem of, like, hey, this is what works. So, like, if we're all consenting to this and we know he's going to be fine, like, whatever. And I think Alma hints at it at some point of, like, hey, if he ever doesn't recover, like at least, you know, we had a good time.
We didn't even talk about the fact that the like framing story of this, because the whole movie, you know, when it starts off, Alma is speaking to someone about her relationship to Reynolds, but we don't see who it is. And we're assuming, or at least I was assuming, that it's some kind of interview, you know, like, oh, I'm here to like interview the muse of the great Reynolds Woodcock or whatever. But then the reveal of like, we finally do see the face of the guy. And then the reveal later that like, oh, that guy's a doctor. And he was first called because Reynolds was poisoned by Alma. It's just such a great reveal. And he's so like baffled at the end. But you get the sense that, yeah, like you say, he's not going to call the police. Is it because he's smitten with Alma? Is it because he's just too weirded out and he's like, as long as he recovers, I'm not going to say anything?
I mean, they're both consenting. Like, it's not, she's not, like...
I feel like that still violates some sort of Hippocratic oath, but I don't know. I'm not a
I
doctor,
have no idea.
So.
This is the 1950s. I don't know.
Who knows? The Wild West back then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I just love this idea that, like, in order for them to continue this cycle, they have to bring a choice few people, like, into the know of what's going on. I feel like Cyril would be down with it. Cyril would be like, okay, as long as you promise to nurse him back to health, like, do it, like, that's fine. Yeah,
she's like, if you kill my brother, I will kill you, but if not, and he's fine with it, like, all right.
Yeah. I finished the movie this time and I was like, how long are they going to last? Do we think that this dynamic that they've created is something that works so much for them that they can sustain this until he dies? Or
good question.
Is it going to be like 2 years tops and then I just don't know.
Because we see a flash forward of her like pushing a baby carriage, but the idea is that that's her envisioning the future and that's not necessarily the actual future, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's basically going to depend on Reynolds, because she basically says, like, you know, I'm doing this because you need to settle down. Like, you need to relax and let some change into your life so that we can even things out and, you know, come to a steady place. Like, that's what Alma is aiming for. The question is he going to be slowly allow himself to change and be flexible and come to that compromise? Or is he just going to dig his heels in? Each time it's going to get worse. The argument will be worse. The poisoning will be worse. And then eventually she's going to kill him.
Well, I also wonder how this plays into the reveal later on in the movie that potentially he's going to start losing business because the dresses that he's making are too old-fashioned. And so as he begins to lose kind of his purpose in this world. Like, and also the one thing that keeps him attached to his mother. Just like, what does that mean for the future of his life? Like, I just don't know.
Well, I mean, the question is also, and this is completely like going outside of the text of this film, but, you know, just within fashion history, I mean, the 1950s were a very highly sort of structured time where, you know, there's the, you know, the hourglass figure that we see for women, you know, tiny waists, big voluminous skirts, or kind of like very structured bodices, pencil skirts, these sort of things. Like it was just, this was, you know, it's all very tightly wound. It's all very like careful and precise. But then eventually the 50s are going to give way to the 60s, where you've got more like, you know, loose A-line dresses. Eventually you get into more hippie-ish clothing. You know, we get to the 70s and it's all like bell bottoms and, you know, fringe and like, just like clothing becomes a lot more colorful and loose, like when we move into the next decade. And so potentially, if he allows it to, marrying a younger woman who seems to have her finger on the pulse and who can encourage him to start looking beyond his horizons could be a really good thing for his business. Like eventually he might be able to actually work his way out.
He is so stuck in his ways. There's no way he's going to shift his taste or his design's aesthetic. There's no way. Yeah. He will. No, he's going to get buried in one of his he is not someone, in my opinion, who is going to compromise his aesthetic at all. It's like, I think, which is why, at least for me, I find the question of where is his life going to be very fascinating. Like, what is he going to do when he loses this? Because he will lose it. Like, he's not going to change with the times. So does he have enough money saved? Like, is he going to lose the house? Like,
what I also want to know is, after Barbara Rose, the drunk lady who fell asleep at her wedding and then they took the dress away, when she wakes up, she's not wearing that dress. And her friend is like, yeah, they barged in and took that dress off of your unconscious body.
Yeah.
I'm assuming she's not going to be patronizing the House of Woodcock from there forward.
Yeah, it's not just because he doesn't make chic clothing that she decides to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just a layer to the story that I didn't see last time.
One. Question for you on that topic, as someone who's like, at least in terms of like historical costuming, a little less like I don't know, obsessive. What are your opinions on the clothing in this movie? I mean, obviously, you know, won Best Costumes. It's like an incredible achievement, but like within the context of the story itself, especially because I'm thinking of like, there's that scene where he sees the finished wedding dress that he made for the royal, and he's like looking at it, and he's like,
it's ugly.
Did great, but it's ugly.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on the clothing overall?
I mean, I love the costumes in this movie. I think the dresses, and I think he makes some like little skirt suits and stuff too, and the little hats. I think all of it is stunning. I mean, there are particular dresses that really stand out in my mind as like, wow, that one is a really big piece.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes. My favorite one is I really like when they're doing the fashion show and Alma walks out in that like reddish, purplish pink dress that's got the pockets and the little
That's my favorite
I
too.
love that one. I think it's a really, really, it's a very simple yet intricately designed dress. So yeah, I mean, I love the costumes here. I obviously don't know what like high fashion looked like in the 50s, so I don't know how this compares to like what high fashion was then, but this definitely feels like a step up from like the housewife clothing that I'm more familiar with from this era. So.
I feel like if you've seen any like Audrey Hepburn movie from the 50s, you know, Roman Holiday or Sabrina or stuff like that, like that's a good funny face. Like funny face. That's a good representation of like high fashion 1950s outfits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know, he looks at that dress and he's like, it's just not very good. And I'm like, yeah, it's I don't know.
It's excellent.
And yet it's also, it doesn't have that wow factor, I think, in a way. Like, it's a very classically 50s sort of silhouette and style, but it's not the wedding dress you want for a royal wedding to me.
I wish I could have seen her wear it. I would love to see it on her. And because I feel like when it's on a white mannequin, it was white on white. It was kind of hard for me to see like the detailing in the bodice part.
Yeah, it's true. I really love it in a way of like, I don't necessarily want to wear it. I just find it fascinating. The dress that he designs for that lady at the very beginning that has the like high lace collar.
Oh, the gold. It's got like the gold part.
Yeah. And like, it's like a big velvety sort of cape thing. It's very like Elizabethan references put onto a 1950s silhouette. I don't know. It's fascinating, but I can also see why she would be like, this stands out, but it's also not very chic. I don't know.
Yeah. Another one of my favorite dresses is, I actually really like the green dress that he makes for what's-her-face that they like take off of her body when she's asleep on the bed. I like that dress a lot.
Yeah. It's a beautiful dress. I love the like, it has this like very, it's like off the shoulder sort of folded neckline. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right.
The fact that she's like, I don't look good in it. I'm like, girl, stop. Like, first of all, you look great. So stop it. Also, the dress is stunning. So stop it.
Yeah. Okay. That is such an interesting scene, by the way, where it's like, and we don't really get a whole lot of insight into his clients apart from her, but the whole thing where it's like, I guess she's an alcoholic who's just constantly getting married to new rich people and embarrassing herself, and also her new husband seems to have some sort of like sketchy connections and maybe did some like war profiteering. Yeah, it's an interesting scene. Okay, is there anything else you want to talk about plot related before we close out?
I don't think so. Yeah.
I guess just to like finish out the plot in terms of, I mean, we referenced it before, but they have this like, well, there's that whole awkward scene where he's feeling increasingly frustrated in his work, and he goes to Cyril and is like, I made a huge mistake. I never should have married Alma. She doesn't fit in here. Like, I can't concentrate. And then she just like walks in behind it while he's saying all this stuff. And
yep.
It's so good. And her revenge is to poison him again with an omelet. But then before he finishes swallowing his first bite, she just tells him what she did. And
wait, she tells him?
Well, she has that whole speech where she's like, I want you tender, helpless, flat on your
but
back,
I
so
feel
I can
like
nurse you back to health.
I feel like before that even happens, he seems to know what she's doing. Like, even when she's over there cooking the omelet, I'm like, how does he know? Maybe he's also put the pieces together of like, I've never gotten sick. Maybe he's figured it out. I don't know.
I was wondering that too. Like, does he... I feel like there's no way he can know, but I think he knows that there is something up. He just doesn't quite know what it is yet. And then when she gives him the
keeps looking at her, and she's giving him this little smirk from across the room.
Yeah, she's like, nothing happening here.
That scene of her prepping and cooking everything before she even goes over to the table and he takes a bite. I wish I would have timed it. Like, how long is it from when the scene begins and she starts cooking until he puts the first bite in his mouth? Because I feel like there's so much build up there. And then after he puts it in his mouth, he like chews so like,
slowly.
The pacing of that final sequence is so good. And the film score, how it like is silent and then it builds, and that last sequence is so good.
While he's chewing, he sort of
and the way the room's lit, the lighting, and so good.
Yeah, he like points the fork at her while he's chewing, like he's waiting for her to. He knows she has something to say, and he's just like, anytime now.
He's like, tell me I'm wrong.
So
tell me I'm wrong.
But yeah, so she basically says, like, I want you sick so that I can nurse you back to health. And then and yeah,
and he's
that's how it's
like,
gonna
hell
be.
yeah, I'm in.
And then he swallows and he says the immortal line, kiss me, my girl, before I'm sick. Which is so weirdly romantic in the context.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, then there's like a final montage where she's like explaining herself to the doctor and is being like, yeah, I'm not sorry, and he's gonna be fine, and we're gonna have a life together. So,
And if he's not fine, then like, hey.
oh, actually, I really love the line. I'd forgotten about this, where she's basically like, if he dies, I will follow him and find him in the afterlife because our love is eternal.
Like, okay.
The way that scene, like, whenever it cuts back to her and the doctor, and they're sitting in this room with this low light, and she's sort of like, her face looks like a painting. It's beautiful, but it's also very sinister looking. It's so good. You're just like, is this woman insane? But also, I mean, it seems to be working for them. So.
I mean, they're both kind of insane.
They're
but
both into it, yeah.
I will say it again. They're both consenting. So it's like, okay.
Who are we to judge?
Yeah, like, have at it, guys. He's clearly
yeah.
very knowingly entering into this.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if
whatever.
you remember, but this was the year, 2017 was the year where there were 3 like high profile movies that had poison mushrooms as a plot point, because this was also the year of The Beguiled with Colin Farrell. And did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, I did. I didn't like it very much. I don't like Sofia Coppola's movies.
Yeah.
I just don't.
And then you haven't seen Lady Macbeth, right? Yet, right? With
No, not yet.
Florence
It's on my list.
Breakout. Yeah. Not to spoil, but poison mushrooms are in some way involved.
I mean,
Anyway,
if Lady Macbeth is involved, I'm sure there's going to be some weird, twisted something going on.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just one of those like weird little things, you know, that will sometimes happen. Okay. Anyway. All right. So this movie, as we did say, it won an Oscar for Best Costumes. It was also nominated for an additional 5 Oscars. So Best Original Score, Johnny Greenwood. Best Actor for Daniel Day-Lewis. Best Supporting Actress for Leslie Manville. Best Director and Best Picture. Vicky Krieps was not nominated, which is an absolutely insane oversight.
She should have been.
And I looked at the list of nominees from that year. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but there's definitely 1 or 2 that I would happily have replaced with her.
Yep.
So, you know, it is what it is. All right. Metacritic currently has this movie at 90%. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 91%. So
This movie is perfect to me. I mean,
it's
what would you change about it?
Literally,
like,
I have no
literally
idea.
what more do people want?
Right. Exactly. So I pulled 2 excerpts from critics' reviews just to kind of close things out. So this is by Tim Grierson in Screen Daily. He says, an impossible love affair rendered in impeccable detail, Phantom Thread beguiles as it confounds, tracing a brittle romance that defies easy categorization, but ultimately articulates the universal truth that nobody can possibly fathom the inner workings of other people's relationships. Writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson has crafted a period drama of startling tonal fluidity, and Daniel Day-Lewis and Vicky Krieps deliver reserved performances that slowly reveal significant depth, transcending the material's potential plight of the artist's cliches to hit at something far richer and more mysterious about desire, ambition, and control.
I like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one. And then a shorter quote. This is by Bilga Abiri from The Village Voice. Perhaps appropriate to its subject, Phantom Thread is a film of contrasting textures, but it's a counterintuitive one. Most tales about people finding love present hard, angular worlds and allow romance to soften the edges. Phantom Thread does the opposite. It presents a soft, even sensuous world, and shows us how sometimes love can come in the cuts and the tears.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. I like that one too.
Yeah.
I feel like you always get good reviews. Mine are always
do.
like, I don't know.
I always enjoy looking through the reviews, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also easier with like newer movies and movies that a lot of people have seen.
No, it's very true. Yeah. I've definitely been on the struggle bus with that sometimes. All right, final thoughts. Truly, I don't have much else to say except this is a great movie, and it is just so strange.
So strange.
Comes to such a strange place, but I think I will continue to think about it. And I definitely need to see the rest of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography.
Yes.
Because I basically liked everything of his that I have seen so far, to lesser degrees than others, but there's nothing I've seen that I've absolutely hated. I know that's not the case for you, but you also love
yeah,
have seen and loved most of his stuff. So anyway, final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like I should make a list, like a Letterboxd list about this at some point. But there are some movies where I just remember the plot twists. And this is a movie where I will never forget my reaction to the plot twist the last time, or the first time I saw it. Like, it's so twisted. It's so twisted and messed up. It's like, what kind of brain comes up with this? But it's so original and so unique. I think this movie is outstanding. There's nothing I would change about it. I think the sound mixing, the costumes, the lighting, the cinematography, the casting, the performances, the script, all of it is just, it can't be done any better than this. So I love this movie. I'm very glad we got to talk about it, and I very much so look forward to talking about more PTA films as the podcast continues, because I have a lot to say about a lot of his movies.
Yes.
So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
All right. Well, do you want to tell our lovely listeners what we're going to be covering in our next episode?
Yes. So speaking of movies that not many people have seen, that will probably be hard to find reviews for.
Also, 2017 movies.
Yes. Next episode, we will be discussing a Mexican. Oh my gosh, please cut that out. My brain is not working. Next episode, we will be discussing a Spanish language film called Sueño en otro idioma, which means I dream in another language. It is a film, I don't remember how it came on my radar, but it came on my radar a few years ago, and I sometime last year was like, I'm just going to turn this on and find out. And I loved it. It's very, very good. It's very slow and just kind of cerebral. You think about it and you feel it and all of that. So yeah, Geneva, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it and to talk about it. I think it's a beautiful film, and I'm excited to watch it again. So yeah.
Great. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpickpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Until next time.